How does the university prepare students not to be disenfranchised? I mean, it's hard at the moment for many journalists out there. Do you prepare them to have to work very hard in order to get their stuff out there, actually receive money for their work?
Well, we train, we educate our students as graduates, as honours students. They're doing a degree of which only part of which is journalism or media related. So they will learn as students the disciplines of writing essays to deadline, of doing exams, of reading books, of going to lectures, etc. All those disciplines remain very important. In terms of working disciplines for the media, of course, deadlines are very important. Learning how to actually understanding the importance of deadlines and of meeting the needs or the demands of your publisher or your commissioning editor are very important, and we do teach that. And we do also teach the disciplines of the sort of NCTJ skills like shorthand, media law, public affairs, these kinds of quite technical aspects of journalistic training. We also teach those, and so students who do all of that and succeed in all of that can go out there with a qualification which says they're very able academics, as well as people who have acquired some of the very important journalism skills that employers actually still look for, even although even though nowadays the kind of range of outlets in media that people are working for has changed and diversified, say, from what it was 30 years ago. Some of the core skills are still relevant, shorthand and so on. So learning these, demonstrating that you've learnt these, picking up the qualifications, the certificates, and taking them out, that's still remains a very important aspect of this whole thing.
What are the main challenges you're finding that your graduates are facing them when they go out into the industry?
I think the main challenge now for the emerging generations of students relates simply to the fact that the big media organisations are retrenching. They are restructuring. They are in some cases contracting. They are in the process of quite a traumatic process of transition from the era of print and broadcasting to the era of online and multimedia and multi-platform. And in that process, a lot of established journalists are being made redundant or taking early redundancy, and they're not all being replaced. So, as with graduates in every sector at the moment in the UK, the financial recession and the credit crunch has made the job market much more competitive. But in the media, you have this digital transition going on as well, the technological challenge, which complicates it, and I think makes it even more of a challenge. I think what you can say though, and what I say to all my students, is that there are more media around than ever before. There's more news media around than ever before. There are more opportunities for journalists and other media workers than ever before. In the past, if you were a journalist, you would be looking at newspapers and maybe TV, maybe radio, but not all three certainly, and probably only be lucky in most of your opportunities would be local media, local newspapers. Now you have not just the print sector, which is in decline, but you have this huge expansion of the internet and online media, with lots of very interesting opportunities there. So it's a time of change. It's a time of quite traumatic uncertainty for a lot of people, particularly those established in the industry. For young people coming out who are flexible, adaptable, who understand the internet, who understand digital media, who understand multimedia, then I think it's actually a very good time, because these opportunities are opening up and they're not going away. The future is definitely, the media are more important, not less important. How it gets paid for, how it's done, the business models that are going to sort of support journalism in the future, some of that is still up for grabs. But that we're going to need journalists, that we're going to need journalism, is undoubtedly true. There's no doubt that there's a demand for these services and these skills. So it's not students should not be too discouraged, I think. But I suppose the the conditions that we face puts more onus on the student to make sure that they really give it their best shot, both when they're studying but also when they're trying to kind of prepare a portfolio and so on. Take nothing for granted, and really work hard to get in there, because there are opportunities for good people.
Do you find that the industry actively does encourage graduates, or is it very much left to the graduate to go out there and make their own contacts and find these stories? How do you find the industry's reaction to graduates?
Well, the industry still works with universities and colleges, ourselves and others, with kind of work placement schemes, partnerships, in-house training schemes, internships. I think the industry is still aware of the need, for new blood and to encourage young entrants into the business. So that continues. But newspaper companies, media companies themselves, under a lot of financial pressure, are obviously, thinking a bit more carefully about where they put their money, in terms of staff development and so forth. Whether they run in-house training schemes or whether they sponsor students to go on particular courses at universities. These are sort of, these schemes are available, and that support is there, but I suppose it is like everything else at the moment under a bit of financial pressure. But it's still happening. I think the industry understands that it's essential for its long-term survival and health that emerging generations of students and so on are given opportunities to find careers, and that's inevitable.
I came across a survey from a recruitment company, an international recruitment company last week, that came back with print journalism to be the 184th most desired occupation out of the top 200. Do you think that's a fair reflection of where the profession is going at the moment, and why do you think that would have been?
184th, that's quite low down, isn't it? And
it came behind the Undertaker, Garbage Man, and Unreal.
I think the journalists have had a problem with public perception for many years. They have always been quite. There's been this schizophrenic attitude of, on the one hand, journalists are seen as crucial figures in democracy and very important to the scrutiny of power and all of those kind of ideas of what journalists are supposed to be about. But then again, you have the paparazzi and you have the scandal mongers and the sleaze and all that, and a lot of people are quite cynical about the media. So I think there's always been that sense of, well, working in the media is glamorous, but it's also perceived as being somewhat sleazy and so on. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that was the perception. Now, I think, added to that, you may have the feeling in a lot of young people that perhaps it's not a very secure career, it's not quite clear what the future of the profession is at the present time, so maybe people are a little bit uncertain, a little bit anxious about committing to it, and maybe that's reflected in that statistic. But I do think, though, that journalists and media workers in general are still regarded as very glamorous, still a very sexy profession to be in, and it is actually quite low paid. It remains very low paid at entry level. Even journalists with qualifications, degrees and NCTJ qualifications are starting on something like 15,000 a year in big newspaper organisations, big media organisations. So it's not great money when you start off. So maybe that puts people off a little bit as well. But I think there will always be people who want to work in the media. There will always be people who look at Kate Adie or Jeremy Paxman or all the various other kind of superstars of media and think, I would like to do that.